Hey guys, it's Alex, and I am here with, once again, my monthly book haul. Of all the videos I post every month, there's always one book haul. I buy books. But honestly, I have been getting a lot better about buying books, or more specifically, not buying books. What I've been doing for the past, 7 months or so is pre-filming my book hauls and scheduling them sometimes months in advance. My last book haul was in October. It was my 5-cent book haul, and I'd actually bought those books in August. So this book haul is all the books I've bought since the end of August. And there are 23, which is a lot, but I did do a much better job of buying books that I specifically want. And also, I acquired a number of these books for free, either as gifts for my birthday, which was back in September, or through exchanges one way or another. So I didn't actually spend that much money. I'd say less than I normally spend on books, which is not that much to begin with. First, I picked up Dark Matter, which all I know is that it is a science fiction thriller. I did know more about it at one point. I remember hearing a lot of people talk about it, I think early in the summer. And I remember hearing people talk about the plot and thinking, that sounds really interesting. I just forgot what it was. And I got this in a book swap with Macy from The Bright Side Girl. I sent her one of my books that I didn't particularly need anymore, and she sent me this, and this is such a beautiful book, and I'm planning to read it for Tome Infinity and beyond in January, because I don't actually have that much science fiction to choose from, and I'm really excited to. Next, I did a fairly massive unhaul about a month ago, and I took a bunch of books to a used bookstore that buys them from me, and I used that money to get 3 new books. I only use store credit to pay for these, so I don't actually count these as buying books, and all 3 of these are books that I've already read, gave 5 stars, and really want to own. The first is Wild Magic by Tamara Pierce. I used to own this book, and then somehow I lost it, and it's the only book in the Immortal series that I don't currently own, and since I want to reread all of her Tortall books at some point next year, I figured it would be good to own this again. And plus, I just really love this book. Then I picked up We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. I read this last year, and it was one of my favorite books of the year. This is a young adult contemporary novel about a girl dealing with grief, and she sort of goes off to college and runs away from everything, and her best friend shows up, and there's some romance things between her and her best friend, and it's just lovely. It's stunning. I adored this book when I read it, and it's one that I'll definitely be reading again. It's so short and quick, and if you like young adult contemporaries, if you like books about grief, if you're looking for YA books with FF relationships, I'd highly recommend this because I thought it was beautiful. And a book that I've talked about on my channel a number of times is Not Otherwise Specified by Hannah Moskowitz. I read this a couple years back, and I've actually read this numerous times. I just kept getting it from the library. But I was so excited to see that the used bookstore had a copy because now I can own it and now I can read it whenever I want. This is another YA contemporary. It's about a girl with an eating disorder, and she's bisexual, and it deals with biphobia and her wanting to be a dancer and wanting to be involved with theater, and it's just amazing. This is, for me, essentially a perfect YA contemporary in every way. I just adore this book, and I know I'm going to read it so many times. And then I have a few books that my best friend gave me for my birthday, or sort of my birthday, that she gave me around the time of my birthday, or that she just gave me because she had a copy and didn't want one. First is John Grisham's The Last Juror. I don't know much about this other than it's crime, drama, thriller type thing, I think. Not sure, but she picked this up for free. It's a fairly beat up copy, but I feel like I've seen this around a number of times, and I don't know, I'm honestly just curious. I figure worst case scenario, it's just going to be a throwaway read. And she gave me Leaving Time by Jodi Picoult, which she'd actually bought for herself, but then she realized she had a copy, so now I have a copy. I have read this. I don't actually remember what it was about. I could read the inside flap, but I don't care enough. For whatever reason, I don't love Jodi Picoult anymore, but I do always want to pick up her books and own them all. I don't know where that weird obsession comes from, but I have almost a full shelf of her books at this point, so it's probably not going to stop anytime soon. Plus, this is just such a pretty book. I love getting pretty hardbacks because they're just so expensive generally, so I don't buy new books for the most part, or hardly ever because I can't afford it, and especially hardbacks, so when I find a pretty hardback in a thrift store or used or anywhere, it makes me so happy. She also gave me Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. This is such a gorgeous edition. Yes, I already own this. Yes, you can see like 8 copies back on my shelf over there. I think I have 8 or 9 different editions of this book already. But I don't know, I collect them all, and because she gave me the first one, this means that now she has an easy gift for me for the next 6 years as she buys me the rest of the books in the series in this edition, which makes us both happy. But it's so pretty, and if you put these copies together like side by side and have like all 7 of them lined up, it creates like a mural effect, and it's so gorgeous. And I don't know, I just really want to collect these books, so now I've started, and they're pretty. And the last book she gave me is Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. I own books 2 through 6, I think. I think there are 6. I got a box set at Goodwill once that was just missing the first book, so she just like picked this up for me from another Goodwill, I think. I was there, I think I pointed it out and was like, hey, you should give me that for my birthday, and now I have it. And I will read the series at some point. I no longer have any excuse to continue putting it off now that I own the first book, but I am quite happy to have finished my collection. And the last book I got for my birthday was actually a gift from my boyfriend, and that is this gorgeous illustrated edition of The Princess Bride. It is so beautiful, so lovely. It's like this amazing book. I mentioned it once because I saw someone on Goodreads. I was scrolling through Goodreads when we were hanging out, and I was like, oh, there's an illustrated edition of The Princess Bride. I didn't know that. And he was like, you should get it. And I was like, I already have a copy. I don't need it. And then he got it for my birthday like 2 months later. And it's so pretty, and I love this book so much. I did unhaul my other copy in my last unhaul video because I don't need 2. And that made me sad because I've read the copy multiple times. But this is so beautiful. The illustrations in this are just so lovely, and I adore this book so much. Sarcasm and Sci-Fi also sent me Meg by Steve Alton back in September for my birthday, basically. She gave me a puzzle for my birthday too, which was lovely, and I have yet to start, but I'm going to start soon. And I haven't read this yet. I kept like meaning to pick it up, but honestly I might save it for Tome Infinity and beyond just because my limited sci-fi selection. My boyfriend really wants to see the movie, and I figured I should read the book first because I like reading the book, and I know this is not going to be like fine literature, but it might be fun. So I don't know. I'm like weirdly excited to read this one because I don't usually read books like this, but I love movies like this, so we'll see how this goes. And for the last book that I was gifted for any reason at all, this was not for my birthday, my father gave me a copy of his recent book because I did a lot of editing work on it. I spent months editing it for him because he didn't have a real editor. All he had was me. So he gave me a copy. It is Dr. Copter by my father, the flying physician who kept his promise to Tangier Island. Basically, it's about this like country doctor who wound up flying over to an island off the coast of Virginia on a weekly basis for like a great many years and made that island a part of his practice because it's like such a small island and has a population of under 500. So it's like hard for them to keep a doctor because they don't have enough people to like sustain their own regular doctor. So all they can get is like a weekly visit from someone from the mainland. And it's basically about him and about the island, and it's really interesting. So yeah, he just gave it to me because I did a bunch of work on it. But I figured I'd include it since it is a book that I technically hauled in the past 3 months. I also went to New York, and while I was there, I visited the Strand, and I picked up 3 books from the Strand, which was fairly more expensive than I usually spend on books, just because the books I buy are usually a couple of dollars or less. I don't usually spend more than like $3 on a book unless I really, really want it. But these sort of served as like my souvenirs from my New York trip, so that was how I justified spending like $20 on 3 books. The first is Please Look After Mom by Kyung-Suk Shin. This is a Korean novel. I believe it's translated into English. And it's about a woman who is separated from her family at a train station and then told from the perspective of her 2 children and her husband as they try to figure out what happened. It seems really interesting. I sort of just picked it up because it was kind of cheap and I wanted the book, and it sounded interesting. I don't read a lot of Asian set books, but it looked good, it sounded good, and it had a really pretty cover, so hopefully it is good. And then I grabbed Agent Zigzag by Ben McIntyre. This is a nonfiction book about Nazi Germany, or about World War II era, about a spy in Britain who was a double agent. I don't know if he was like betraying Britain or betraying Germany or betraying both. Unsure. But it looked really interesting. I like spy stuff. I don't read a lot of spy stuff just because it can get like too dramatic for me in fiction, and I don't actively look for a lot of spy nonfiction. But this does sound really interesting and right up my alley. And the final book I picked up at the Strand was My Father's Country by Vibke Bruns. This is about a man who was part of a plan to assassinate Hitler, and he was caught and executed, and it's a memoir of his daughter, basically about her life and about her father and about what her life was like after his execution, I believe. It's really interesting. I love Nazi-era Germany, and I love more of, like, the cultural side of Nazi-era Germany and, like, what was happening, like, within the government and within society as a whole, not just about the war and the Holocaust. So this book sounded right up my alley. I love nonfiction like this, and I'd never heard of it before. I love picking up random nonfiction about like stories that I'd never heard before and just learning about new things and eras I'm interested in. So hopefully I wind up really loving this because I feel like this could be a new favorite. The rest of these books I just picked up from random thrift stores over the past few months. These aren't necessarily like the cream of the crop. We're sort of getting into were these really necessary purchases? But I did purchase them, so now I own them and we'll read them at some point, maybe. First is The Constant Princess by Philippa Gregory. I don't know anything about this book. I didn't read the description. I just have heard a number of good things about Philippa Gregory. So I picked up some of her books, and I picked up some more of her books, and now I own like 4 of her books, and I've still never read her. So I'm not allowed to buy any more of her books unless I read them and enjoy them a lot. Because I have 4, and that's a good limit to set. For haven't read this author, own a bunch of their books. And I grabbed Uprising by Margaret Peterson Haddix. This is about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in 1911. It's a middle grade novel, I believe. It might be young adult. Margaret Peterson Haddix writes a lot of like younger YA or middle grade books that I enjoy. Her writing style is just really fun. Her stories are really fun. I do think I've read this. I'm fairly certain I read this as like a middle schooler probably, and I remember enjoying it. And just honestly, if I see any of Margaret Peterson Haddix's books in a thrift store, I'll grab them because I love her, and she writes a variety. She's written like some speculative fiction, and then some like historical fiction, and some contemporary fiction, I think. She has like these weird plots, but they're just like so fun and like really well done, and I just enjoy her. And I got The Martian by Andy Weir. I don't think I have to explain this book is sci-fi. People just rave about this book, and I do want to get more into sci-fi. I have like 3 sci-fi books in this haul, which is a lot for me, because usually there are none. But I am really excited to get to this at some point. I don't think it will be too soon. This is a book that I do want to read, but it's kind of on the back burner while I get through other things I want to read first. But hopefully sometime next year. The Trespasser by Tana French. I didn't like Into the Woods or In the Woods or whatever that book was called, her first book. I didn't like that, but I have, I think, the lookalike on my shelf, and then I saw this at a little free library, so I was like, might as well grab it, you know. I'm going to grab something. This one looks interesting, and hopefully I like her books more than her first one, because I do feel like there was enough in her first one that I could like one of her books. That one just had a number of choices that I didn't particularly enjoy. But I'm willing to give this one a try, and worst case scenario, I don't like it and I just return it to the little free library. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I did have a copy of this that I unhauled in my last unhaul video. I unhauled it because I found this book. It was just $1 at Goodwill, and my other copy was a tiny mass market paperback edition, which is rather thick for Jane Eyre. That book was like a brick, and this is still, you know, quite thick, but at least it's normal book size, and I kind of do like the Barnes & Noble Classics editions. I know they're not the nicest, but I can find them at thrift stores and such, so that means I can collect them, which makes them kind of a priority for me. I like the way that they look and they match on my shelf, and they're pretty much the only editions that I can actively collect. But I will read this at some point. This was just a replacement copy. The Lion Game by Ruth Ware. It's a thriller. I don't know what it's about, but I've heard a number of really good things about Ruth Ware. And I have another of her books, In a Dark, Dark Wood, which I'm planning to read this month. I might have started it by the time this video is posted, but probably not. Hopefully I like that, and hopefully I like this. I haven't read the plots of either of them. I have no idea what they're about, but they're thrillers, so worst case scenario, I figured they'll be kind of boring and I can unhaul them. I didn't pay that much for them. But potentially I could really like them, so I'm kind of excited because I've heard a lot of people love her. Another replacement copy is A Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin. I have the really big paperback, big paperback edition of this book, but for whatever reason, I really like the mass market paperbacks of Game of Thrones, which sounds ridiculous because I just complained about Jane Eyre being like a brick, and this is literally the size of a brick. But I just like the way the mass market paperbacks look on my shelves, so I'll be getting rid of A Clash of Kings that I already own and replacing it with this, which is tiny and cute and will probably be annoying to read when I eventually read it, but you know, it's tiny and cute, and I don't like the giant, huge, floppy paperbacks that Game of Thrones series is when it's like the big paperback edition. And I picked up The Last of August by Brittany Cavallaro, which is the second book in the Jamie Watson and Charlotte Holmes series. The Charlotte Holmes series, that's what I was going for. I own the first one, and I plan on reading that this month as well. So I saw this at a thrift store and was like, wow, a really nice hardback edition of this book. That's lovely. I must own that. So I just picked it up. It's a pretty book. I'm kind of excited to read the first one, and I will read the second one and potentially the third, but I don't know. We'll see how I like them, but they seem like they'd be really great fun. And the final book in this haul is one that I'm also fairly excited about. I hadn't been looking for this book, and it was just kind of random that I picked it up, but I got it in a book box, so I didn't pay any extra for it, and that is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. It's such a pretty book. I got it because it's pretty and it's hyped, and it's just a gorgeous book of the month hardback, and I can't buy a hardback book of the month, you know? They're just too expensive for me. They're out of my price range. It's not an option. So when I see them in the thrift store, I have trouble resisting them. And I don't read a lot of fantasy like this, so I figure I could give it a try. Maybe see if I like it. I don't actually know what it's about, but I have heard Books with Nahid talk about Naomi Novik a couple of times or mention her. I don't know. We'll see if I like it, but I get excited when I find fancy editions of books or specific things that are just really nice looking, because I can't go out and buy those books for $15 or $20. Getting them like this is just really, really happy making for me. And this ends my book haul, my excessive book haul. It's not that excessive because a lot of these books I'm very excited for and specifically wanted, or they replace other books, or I got them for free. So I'm okay with this. This was a good book haul for me. I don't know if after this I'll actually be doing monthly book hauls because I had them pre-scheduled so far in advance that I knew for a fact I'd be doing them every month. And now I'm all caught up, and as of posting this, I literally have no more books to haul. I don't have a stack I've already started like I usually do. So this might be my last book haul for a month or two. I will continue to do them, just not as frequently or as large, because I'm buying fewer books. And that is a good thing for me, because I have an excessive number of books. Let me know down below if you guys have read any of these books, if you're really interested for me to read any of these books. Feel free to tell me to read them if you're really excited for me to read them, or warn me off anything that's truly terrible. I'm probably still going to read them all eventually anyway, and probably not for a while, but I always do like to hear your guys' thoughts, even if I just don't listen. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys again soon.